and more specifically, maybe drawing some parallels between AEW and WCW. When All Elite Wrestling launched, it was on TNT, of course, with Dynamite, and it was just 2 hours a week. And they started to do other tapings, things like Dark and Elevation, where those were really YouTube shows. But nobody respectfully paid all that much attention to them. But it was important to get guys reps and get people an opportunity to get familiar with the AEW audience, super serve that insatiable AEW audience at times, and just reps for the performers. But it starts as a 2 hour program. And with the expansion of media rights, which is something that WCW never participated in because they were a television company, the goal was to provide more content. So with the success of Dynamite comes more money and more TV time requested. So we launch in 2021 Rampage. So now we've got a second show, a third hour, and this is all under the Warner Brothers Discovery banner. They recently put out a press release sort of touting the success Warner Brothers did. So that's got to be a good sign for AEW folks. But Nitro eventually, and I guess we should mention, you had Saturday Night. Saturday Night was there before Nitro was there.
Mm-hmm.
The syndicated shows like Pro and Main Event, they were there before Nitro was there. But when you added in Thunder, man, you were dead set against it, according to your book. And you felt like it might dilute the actual show. And I'm wondering now, as we've passed the 6-month mark of Collision, do you think that Collision has perhaps had a similar effect on Dynamite the same way Thunder did on Nitro? Or is there any parallel that can be drawn at all?
No, I think there's a lot of parallels, and if you go back, you and I talked about this when it was announced that, AEW, and this is why I was still very supportive. So this perspective that I'm going back now on is the comments I made is probably 5 years old, right? My perspective then was don't do it, Tony. I know there's reasons to do it. There's always a reason to do something you want to do. If I want to do something stupid, I can justify it anyway in a million different ways and make it sound good to myself. It's a bad habit. But I was critical of it. I said, I think it's a mistake based on my experience. It was a mistake because you not only, in the case of WCW, I was worried about dilution, saturating the product. There's only so much time in everyone's lives for your product, whatever it is. I watched a series. Lori and I started a series the other night called Hijacked. Phenomenal series. Phenomenal storytelling. A lot of great things about the show. Hijacked. Check it out. But I can only watch an hour of it at a time. I can't sit and watch something for 4 or 5 hours. Or if it's a longer series and maybe there's 6, 8, 10 seasons, I'm not going to watch 2 or 3 hours of anything, no matter how much I love it every night or even once a week, right? So my concern with WCW became Nitro and Thunder was about just audience fatigue. How much more wrestling will my audience make time for? And then as you think through that, you realize that there are probably some that are going to, a large percentage that are going to go, you know what, I'm just not going to watch 4 hours of wrestling in prime time. My wife will divorce me. My kids will leave, whatever. My dog will piss on the floor, whatever. You're spending too much time watching wrestling. You're going to lose some of that. So which one are they going to pick? And at the end of the day, there's audience fatigue. But the real problem, and this is what concerned me the most 5 years ago with AEW, which has kind of borne out to be true, I guess, is that in doing these different shows, for whatever justifications may exist, you're not only diluting the product on television, but you're diluting your resources, your creative resources. Because you've got a young company 5 years ago, everybody's learning on the job. Creating, writing, producing, and executing great wrestling is a difficult job. Made more so when the people doing it have no real experience.
Right.
And have to learn as they go. and then to dump other obligations and expose your product to the audience when you don't have the experience, the infrastructure, the staff, or the vision creatively, and now you're dumping more pressure on you. We're seeing how that's playing out. Had Tony waited, in my opinion, this is not a fact, this is just me, having been there and done that, and having had tremendous success and some pretty abysmal failures along the way, I have the unique perspective of looking at things from both angles, objectively. I don't weigh one over the other. I think they're both equally valuable when it comes to those two perspectives, from success and from lack thereof. And my opinion back then was, don't do it yet. Make your core brand healthy and stand on its own, even if it means saying not yet to your broadcast partner, because they don't want you to fail. Even though they say, we want another show, you can say no. I didn't. Here's that mistake category. I didn't, because I was working for the guy that said he wanted more. I didn't have the option of saying no. Perhaps. We'll never know. But I didn't. And the result was the result.
I hope your critics listen, because I mean, I know that there's a lot of people who've decided that they don't like you and they don't like this program without ever actually listening. They just read a clickbait headline here or there somewhere. But that's what we've been saying from the beginning. You're uniquely qualified to talk about the successes and the failures. And you saw what got WCW hot, and you saw what ultimately saw WCW circle the drain. And so when I feel like people are, and I don't know, I feel like I take it more personally than you do sometimes, but when people are just dragging you through the mud and saying, oh, he killed 2 promotions. Hey, mucker father, WCW had never had a profit before Eric Bischoff. And let's make a list of all the promoters who went head to head and tried to fight Vince McMahon, and show me where anybody beat him once, whether it was Bill Watts, or it was the Grahams, or it was Vern, or Don Owen, or the Crockett's. I mean, just make a list. They all lost. Only one guy had Vince on his heels, and he beat him over 100 times, but 83 times in a row. That's the reason we named the show that, but just to remind people who Eric is, and not this bullshit narrative that, oh, he bankrupted 2 companies. Bitch, it was already bankrupt when he got there. Neither one of them had ever turned a profit. What are you talking about? He got wrestling hotter than ever because he did something different. And he can come on this program and say, oh, I don't know if I would do that. And you should listen, because he saw what worked. And more importantly, he saw what didn't work. But instead, it's this gotcha thing like, well, in the end, his didn't work out. Whose did, muckerfather? Whose did? Eric's did for a little while. Nobody else's did at all, ever, in the history of time and space. And I just love when you get on here and you're like, hey, and when I got Thunder, and here's a failure, I didn't say no because I couldn't say no. I just think that makes you an evolved human being, Eric. And I hope that your critics will listen to that and understand that you are perhaps the only person qualified to comment on this sort of thing.
Well, thank you for that. And again, the criticism or the perspective is from that position of not, I've never come at any situation or conversation or question or challenge, well, I did this and I proved that I was right. No, brother. I mean, I've had some great success. I've had some, as I said, abysmal failures, and I've had a lot of stuff in between. And to be able to kind of have a analytical layer over my perspective that allows me to kind of break down what led to the success and what led to the failures or mistakes or bad choices is fun for me to talk about. And it is frustrating when you hear that narrative. You know, I didn't run TNA. I expressly demanded in my contract with TNA from day one that I not be an employee or have anything to do with the operations of the business. But yet, according to some, I bankrupted TNA. You know, and by the way, WCW never filed for bankruptcy, right? Jimmy Kellner made a decision.
TNA's still going. Nothing was bankrupted.
Yeah. So this Dex Harwood narrative and the bullshit out there. It is frustrating, but I don't really care. I'm going to keep doing what I do. Doesn't matter. I'm having fun, It's all that matters to me.